It was April 2014. My sister and I, we went to a women's prison, and we'd been there a few times over the years, but this night they finally let me play for the whole prison. I had never seen a more haggard, worn group of women in my life, neck tattoos and shaved heads. And I immediately thought, I don't know if they're going to like any of my songs.
Hollow wood and stone, an empty canvas all his own.
So we started playing the songs, and one by one, song by song, women just started crying. And there was one woman all the way in the back in a row all by herself. She had blue eyes and black hair, and I remember thinking I'd never seen a woman with blue eyes and black hair. So as everybody else is crying, she just sort of sitting with her head cocked and her jaw clenched, and I could tell she was trying to keep it together. And I got to a song finally towards the end of the set called In Their Absence. And I began to talk about how God's great desire is to swallow everything in life you've been denied as a child, all of the joy, the peace, the security, the love, that He wants to swallow those things and then become them. Be the father that you never had. Be the mother that you never
I
had.
needed heaven to repair these walls, or even better, a wrecking ball.
And as soon as those words fell out of my mouth, the woman in the back with the blue eyes and the black hair, she just collapsed into her hands and began violently weeping. And I was so caught off guard by it that I started crying. And I backed away from the microphone and I surveyed the room, and I realized every woman but two were just sobbing.
Make it smooth. He placed his hands.
So we sort of gathered our emotions, and a chuckle kind of went through the room like, look at us, we're just a mess.
With scale and fashions life to suit his will. But I needed heaven to repair these walls, or even better, a wrecking ball.
A year later, I drove 50 miles north on a Saturday morning to Wyoming, Minnesota to take part in a little volunteer training for a jail ministry. And so we all sat down with this older couple and these two gentlemen, and the older couple just asked us if we'd share our stories. And as she was doing that, another woman came in and sat down. And I felt like I kind of recognized her, but I didn't really think much of it. So we began telling our stories one by one. This gentleman told his story, and this gentleman told his story of why he wanted to volunteer. And then it got to her, and she began to tell one of the most devastating stories that I had ever heard in my life, that eventually landed her at the women's prison where my sister and I had been playing. She got out a year early and was now living in a shelter, working part-time for a church. She'd found Jesus while in prison through this horrible set of circumstances. And she just wanted to love people the way that she had been loved by a chaplain who had brought her to Christ during really her darkest moment. And by now I'm crying, listening to her story, and everybody turned to me because now it was my turn to tell my story. And I looked at her and I said, it's stories like yours that have me doing what I'm doing. In fact, I was at that prison a year ago with my sister, and that's really the night that my story sort of took hold. And she looked at me and smiled, like kind of a sneaky smile, like she wanted to say something. And I looked at her, I said, "Are you there?" She said, "Yeah, I was there." And then I leaned in closer and I realized she had blue eyes, long black hair.
More than anything, more than anything, I need your tools to repair these walls.
It was that girl.
You could be my hand.
I said, "Were you in the back row all by yourself?" And just like that night 1 year ago, she grabbed her face and just crumpled and began weeping. And the air kind of went out of the room as the other folks realized I recognized this girl. What they didn't know is that night in April of 2014, when I left the prison, her face was seared into my brain. I must have told the story of her face at the prison that night to 100 people over the course of the next year. She became, in my mind, sort of the emblem of the Salvage Project. And here we are a year later in the most mathematically improbable circumstances, sitting in the same room. And I just said, I never forgot your face. I've thought about you every day since that night. And now you're just sitting right in front of me.
I need your tools to repair these walls.
And that moment for me, now at that time I'd been doing the Salvage Project tours for about 6 or 7 months. That was really the moment for me. I realized, this is it. Because I had still reluctantly, been trying to take care of my family. And you don't make a lot of money running a charity. But I had been asking God, would you give me a little more peace that I'm doing the right thing? And that's what he gave me.
My wrecking